Welcome to What's the Scenario with PLRB, where we explore claims and coverage scenarios relevant to insurance professionals. I'm Alicia Watley.
I'm Tim Havler.
And I'm Mike Broad.
Tim, what's the scenario?
This week, Homeowner was an elderly widow in Texas who was not too keen on moving into a retirement home, so she continued to live in her own house by herself. As she got older, a lot of normal maintenance started to get ignored, neglected, including the roof. The shingles were old, looked like they were about to fall off any day, and sure enough, one day a windstorm came through and 30 to 40 shingles blew off of her roof. She called her insurance company. The adjuster reviewing the file thinks, okay, I know wind is a covered cause of loss, but wear and tear and deterioration aren't covered causes of losses, so he's wondering what to do when there are multiple contributing factors. So, thoughts, comments, questions, feelings? Mike, I noticed you seem to have different scenery today. Might you be in a
Here
different
in beautiful,
location?
I'm in lovely Downers Grove with you two for a
All
change.
right. In your
Yay.
own office with
Yes. We're
an
just
Ohio
Buckeye in the back
something?
there. Yes.
That's what I
OH.
thought.
Remember OH?
I
I
know.
I
remember.
know. Yay. Arthur.
I remembered reluctantly. So,
So I have Alicia, you never replaced her roof, right? I mean, you've
no,
had
because I don't do that kind of stuff.
smart. That's one time when renting makes a lot of sense. I haven't yet either, Tim. We're probably about 3 to 5 years away from the end of the useful life of our place. So we're going to have to do a roof here before too long. But knock on wood, right now we're still good.
Unless a hailstorm comes through in the next 3 to
Well,
5 years, of course.
at least then I would maybe have some help with my insurance carrier.
How about you, Tim? How's your roof holding up?
I bought a house about 2 years ago, and I thought that they said it was a 2021 roof, which would have made it about a year old at the time, but I'm starting to have my doubts about that because it seems to be going faster than I had hoped. So I'm a ways off from any replacement, but they don't last forever.
Nothing
That's
lasts
true.
forever. All right, so with that said, can there be coverage for a roof that's past its useful life?
There can be coverage for a roof, even though it's past its useful life. So say it's a 20-year roof lifespan average, and say we're on year 25. It can be covered because it still does have value in the sense that it's performing a valuable function of keeping the insured dry. Well, obviously, ACV is going to be low, very low, but if they get replacement cost is new for old. So they would, if it's coverage, you get that new roof. It seems like a windfall to the insured, but that's really the very nature of replacement cost. Oh, and I do think there's a limit to how far we can stretch this. Yes, as long as it's functioning as a roof, I think it could be covered. But if it's so bad, there are gaping holes and it's not even doing what a roof is supposed to do, at that point, I think you can say it's valueless and you can't have loss or damage to something that's already valueless.
And I think some of the carriers out there are adding endorsements that might say for a roof that's lost its or it's gone over its useful life age that there might be ACV roofing
I
endorsements that are only going to pay ACV and not replacement cost on those situations potentially.
I just saw one of those the other day.
Yeah.
With the roof endorsements, it's those and the cosmetic damage is the other one that's become pretty popular.
Yep. So help me out with one here, Tim. I've heard about something called concurrent causation. I think we've talked about that before on the podcast. But is there can you rely on that anti-concurrent causation language to say, hey, it was still wear and tear?
So I don't need to reach into my pocket today because I have this on
Yay!
my
All
desk.
right.
So you mentioned the Anti-Concurrent Causation Preface, which is
Yes.
a big mouthful, but it's really just that one sentence in the policy, and every adjuster, this will ring a bell for them. Such loss is excluded regardless of any other cause or event contributing concurrently or in any sequence to the loss. So when you have that and you have multiple causation, you only need that one exclusion to apply, and then you can exclude the whole thing. Except for 4 states, Washington, California, West Virginia, Alaska, which refused to uphold that preface. But we'll put that aside because this is the wear and tear exclusion we're talking about.
Right.
And most policies, the vast majority of them, don't have that sentence that I just read in front of the wear and tear exclusion. That usually goes in front of surface water, earth movement, ordinance or law. Those are the big ones, the section 1
Okay.
exclusions. But wear and tear, that's the coverage AB exclusion, and that doesn't have that language, so we go back to the default rule, which is proximate cause, meaning you can only exclude that loss on wear and tear if wear and tear is the proximate cause of the loss.
So if the roof was just leaking and there was no weather event that caused anything, then potentially wear and tear come into play. But since there was roof damage by wind, wind's the covered peril, so we're okay, maybe?
Wear and tear, if there's a leak, wear and tear for sure for the shingles or the roof, because that was wear and tear. For the leak, now you're getting into an ensuing loss issue, which I think we'll get into that later.
Oh,
But
but
one
maybe
other
there's
thing,
coverage for the water damage to the inside, maybe.
maybe,
Maybe.
depending on what you think an ensuing loss is or what the courts in your state think an ensuing loss is. One final comment I wanted to make on anti-concurrent causation preface. I have seen it before wear and tear, maybe a couple times over the 10 years that I've been doing this. It's extremely rare, but some companies do write that. And I have also seen it been upheld by a court. So it is possible. It's just hardly ever done in practice.
And that language would have to appear before the wear and tear
Correct. So
exclusion.
the wear and tear exclusion. So in this hypothetical, we have wear and tear and wind that are combining.
Right.
If we had that language before the wear and tear exclusion, we would just say there's no coverage because wear and tear was one contributing factor, and that's all you
Okay.
need.
Wow. Once again, I've learned something, Tim, so thank
Well,
you.
you're going to learn a lot more in this episode.
Yay.
All right, so we've talked about anti-concurrent causation. For this particular claim, what is the proximate cause? Was it the windstorm or was it the wear and tear?
Okay, just for a second, let's ignore the fact that we're in Texas. Let's pretend we're pretty much anywhere else.
Okay.
The
What do you have
normal
against
rule
Texas,
here.
Tim? It's a wonderful state.
Wait, it's not Ohio.
Oh, that's true.
Yes, Mike.
Jeez.
Texas is number 2. So the majority rule in most states is the proximate cause means the dominant and efficient cause. So let's imagine that those shingles were so old, they were just hanging on by a thread. I just barely still. And then a 30-mile-an-hour gust comes through and that shingle just comes right off. I would say there that the wear and tear exclusion is the dominant cause, therefore the proximate cause, therefore excluded as wear and tear. Now let's do the reverse, which is, yeah, the shingles were old, but they weren't that bad. But then you had 50-mile-an-hour, 60, 70-mile-an-hour gusts that came and ripped it off. Then I'm thinking, well, maybe the wind was the dominant cause of that loss, so it would not be excluded because the proximate cause was wind. Okay, hopefully I've made sense so far because now we're going to go to Texas.
All right.
All right.
Texas.
Oh, wait a minute. What part of Texas are we going to, Tim?
Oh,
Dallas? Houston?
what's your favorite part of Texas?
Alicia? What do you think?
Houston.
El Paso? Houston? All right, we'll go to Houston.
Okay, we can go with Houston. So in Texas, when covered and non-covered perils combine to create a loss, the insured is entitled to recover that portion of the damage caused solely by the covered peril Failure to do so results in no coverage. So this sounds a lot like the Anti-Concurrent Causation Preface, even though it wasn't written in the policy. This is now coming from Texas case law that takes a very restrictive view about what proximate cause can mean. So
Will
we're
you
not
run me? Will you run that by me one more time, Tim? You know, I'm a
Yes.
simple man, but
Okay. In Texas,
all right.
when covered and non-covered perils combine to create a loss, the
Okay.
insured is entitled to recover that portion of the damage caused solely by the covered peril. It is then the insured's burden to establish what was caused solely by the covered peril. Failure to do so results in no coverage.
Gotcha.
So you see, the problem is if you have two causes now, one excluded, one not excluded, and they both had some meaningful contribution to what was going on, that means it wasn't solely caused by the covered cause. So you could probably say it was excluded. That would be a reasonable argument. Currently in Texas, there's a lot of discussion going on right now in Texas about this. The Texas Supreme Court they so far or not recently have taken up one of these wind shingle cases. Hopefully they do soon. It would be nice to get at least a little bit more clarity and see if they might change or shift towards the majority approach. But right now, that's the law. If you're in any other state, again, you'd go back to what I would do is I'd go to PLRB's 50 state survey on proximate cause and see very specifically what the law is in that jurisdiction.
Perfect.
But again, Texas is the one you really got to look out for.
Okay. So we're in Texas. Can we get coverage via the ensuing loss clause?
Alicia, you're sounding like a creative public adjuster. We've made an interesting argument. So we said no anti-concurrent causation preface. We went with proximate cause, but in Texas, we have a restrictive view on proximate cause. But what if we go to wear and tear? Back to my policy now. This is the ISO HO 3 2011 edition. We see that after wear and tear, it says that losses that result or ensue from wear and tear can be covered. So is this maybe an end around argument to try to get coverage here? I don't think so. I think it's a weak argument. I think there's not enough separation. The excluded cause is the old shingles that are about to blow off. The loss is the old shingles that blew off. To me, they're too close. There's not enough separation. Mike, going back to what you said about the water, now we got one more degree of separation. I think there's a decent chance the water could be an ensuing loss, but the shingles themselves, I doubt it. I'm going to say that argument does not convince me.
So how about this one, Tim, especially with the weird, I won't say weird, but the unique nuances of Texas law on this one. So we've lost, 30, 40 shingles. So do we just repair or replace those 30, 40 shingles? Or maybe going back to our old matching claim, do we have to do the whole slope of the roof? What do you think there, sir?
I think if you can do the spot repair of the 30, 40 shingles, I think you can do the spot repair. The problem is all of the reasons that maybe you can't do it. Matching, you just said, that's a big one. If there's a matching problem, okay, you need to take that into account. Maybe there's just something in the design of the roof, maybe wood shakes, where you can't just take one shingle and put in a new one. If you have to do the whole slope, then you have to do the whole slope. There could be some sort of local ordinance or law. Here's an interesting one. Mike, I'm wondering what your take is on this one.
Oh, no.
What if you could normally do the 30 to 40 shingles? Wouldn't be a problem, not a matching issue, it's fine. But then you find out that the decking underneath the shingles is so rotted and so old, then that's the only reason you can't do the 30 or 40 shingles. You're just going to have to rip off everything, new decking, whole new elevation of shingles.
Now, I did have a personal experience with that. So you might be able, we did have an area where when our house was built, sometimes like to do the siding, they'll put scaffolding up, which they'll attach to the roof so that it doesn't fall This had left a little hole and they went through the shingle. So over time, water leaked through, damaged the decking. So we talked to the builder and had them come out, and they were able to replace just a little portion of the decking that was rotted, and then farm in some shingles in there. I don't know, farm in probably isn't the right terminology, but that's the only word I could come up with. So they were able to repair the decking that was damaged, and could also tie in some new shingles that look pretty close to the old ones, so no problem there. So maybe you could repair it, Tim, unless the whole darn thing is
Rotted.
ruined and rotting, and then you're probably doing the whole thing.
Right, yeah. And sometimes some roofers will say X, Y, and Z must be done, and some other roofers will say A, B, and C must also be done.
Right.
So,
And I always go with C, at D, and E. That's the kind of person I am.
All right. So, Tim, what can we take away from this scenario today?
to recap, an elderly widow in Texas did no roof maintenance for 25 years. A gust of wind blew off 30 to 40 shingles. In Texas, at least at the present moment in time, the wear and tear exclusion applies, even if it combined with wind to produce the loss. For those of the rest of us who aren't handling claims in Texas, coverage would depend on usually which is the more dominant factor, the wind or the old age, which of those was more significant. I would encourage anyone who has access to look at PLRB's 50-state survey on proximate cause laws for each jurisdiction. And other than that, Mike, what else does PLRB have for adjusters?
Well, before I get there, Tim, they of course could reach out to you too and your fine colleagues to say, hey, I've got this scenario. What do you think about coverage in this deal too? Because you guys are experts in researching this kind of cool stuff. But of course, as always, you can check us out at our new improved website, www.plrb.org. On the education side, we'll have some cool stuff you can look at that gets into these issues. And like Tim said, 50 state surveys on a number of these issues. You'll see some adjuster resource sheets potentially. All sorts of cool stuff that might help you out in your investigation from your friends at PLRB. And Alicia, can we include all this cool stuff in the show notes?
We absolutely can. And there you'll also find a recap of the key points from this episode, links to our social media, and information on how to submit your own adjuster story. So don't forget to subscribe, rate us on whatever platform you listen to us on, and we'll see all of you next time.
And before they leave, Alicia, let's highlight that point again. Do you have a scenario out there, folks, who are listening to this podcast right now that would love us to tackle your scenario? Please send it in either from the show notes, or you can always email us at PLRB as well. Let us know you have a scenario you want us to talk about. We'd be happy to do so. Right?
Absolutely.
We would be happy to do so.
Right. All right. But for now, bye-bye.
The views and opinions expressed in this resource are those of the individual speaker and not necessarily those of the Property and Liability Resource Bureau, its membership, or any organization with which the presenter is employed or affiliated. The information, ideas, and opinions are presented as information only and not as legal advice or offers of representation. Individual policy language and state laws vary, and listeners should rely on guidance from their companies and counsel as appropriate.